Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Executive Corner Expert Talks 20 Minutes Roundup. I'm James Preston for Kalkine Media, and today I'll be sitting down with Mr. Jurie Wessels, the non-executive chairman, and also Mr. Eugene, the Chief Executive Officer of Vanadium Resources. And Vanadium Resources Limited is engaged in exploring and developing one of the world's highest grade and largest vanadium projects in South Africa. The Steelpoortdrift Vanadium Project is located in a premium mining jurisdiction of the Limpopo province and lies in the prolific Bushveld geological complex. Jurie Wessels is the co-founder of Vanadium Resources, and he has over 24 years of experience in the mining industry, spanning multiple continents. And Eugene also brings with him a quarter of a century of experience as a metallurgical and process engineer. Both of them now join me on Kalkine to shine a light on the incredible work that Vanadium is doing. Jurie and Eugene, great to have you here.
Thank you very much, James.
Guys, let's waste no time whatsoever. Let's begin with something that you've done quite recently. Back in July, VR8 declared maiden ore reserves of 73.85 megatons with a grade of 0.75% V2O5 for the Steelpoortdrift project. Now, there's the belief that those ore reserves are enough to support a 25-year life for the mine. How significant are the maiden reserves, and do you have any further plans to expand on them?
James, basically, if you look at an ore reserve is a step up from a resource. The resource just indicates you've got material in the ground, where the significance of an ore reserve means that you have now got independent, verified proof that the metal that's in the ground can be economically extracted and you can make a product out of it. So you've now got metal that you can hang your hat on when you've got a reserve. The other significance for us is the fact that it covers our full 25-year life of mine as in the current mining plan. So we don't have to do any planning around material that's not in a reserve. Everything is in the reserve. So it gives you a huge level of confidence that the project is economically sustainable and viable for the full 25 years. Saying that, because we've already covered the full 25 years, there's no targeted aims to increase the reserve. However, as part of the upcoming feasibility study, the opportunity might arise to increase those reserves, and we will do so if that opportunity does present itself. But there's no push or urgency to increase it at all at this stage, as we've got enough. We've got more than enough to keep this company going for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's a pretty enviable position to be in, that's for sure, and so early on in the lifeline of it too. So well done on your discovery in that sense. Now, Vanadium Resources has already concluded that the pre-feasibility study for the Steelpoortdrift project. Could you shed a bit more light on the technical and commercial attractiveness of the Vanadium project?
Well, if you look at the Vanadium project, it ticks the four main boxes for any mining project. We've got a huge reserve or resource at 660 million tons in total. So we've got a lot of flexibility to either expand size-wise, go bigger, or run more than the 25 years that we've got in place. It's a very shallow, low dipping deposit, so it's very easy to mine with a low mining cost. The grades are very high comparable to most other deposits, where we've got a high grade component in the region of 1.2% in situ, which is almost double what most other guys target to mine. And then finally, metallurgically, it's very easy to upgrade and make and produce a final product from the ore reserve that we've got. Now, if you bring all four of those components together, it means that we've got a very long life, and we can produce in the lowest quartile of all the producers out there. And that's very important in any commodity market, especially if you look back at the last week or two. Commodity markets can be volatile. So you always need to be one of the lowest cost producers. And that's the main attractiveness of this project, is that we are in the lowest quartile with an easy, big deposit to mine.
Always good to hear as well. And I mean, you talk about volatility there. Fortunately, it's got nothing to do with the level of volatility that we see in the crypto market, for example. So we know that it can be a bit of a volatile space, commodities, but still inherently less risky than so many other areas there. And we know that you're doing such high grade work with your projects to ensure that any potential volatility in that commodity space can be circumvented. Now, Vanadium has recently commenced the definitive feasibility study on the project. What would you say would be the major focus points of the study itself?
Well, the major focus points would be we initiating a bulk sampling campaign, whereby we'll be essentially opening up two smallish open cast pits to extract samples. The pits would mine around 20,000 tons in total, which will give massive amounts of information going forward to when we actually start opening the mega pit. So it'll inform our mining designs. Then secondly, the feasibility study would put in place the final outstanding information required for environmental permits. That's still outstanding. Most of the environmental permits are in place, and there's one or two that can only be finalized once the feasibility study is completed. So that will be the final piece of the puzzle in there. And then lastly, the major focus point of a feasibility study is actually to increase your confidence levels in the operating and capital cost to such a point where project financing, debt funding, any of those instruments would then become available, and we can then proceed into construction.
Absolutely. Now, you've also announced that you'll be adopting the environmental, social and governance, or ESG framework with 21 core metrics and disclosures that was put forward by the World Economic Forum. Could you shed a bit more light on VR8's commitment to that ESG framework?
Look, in reality, if you're not committed to it, you can whitewash or greenwash the whole ESG 21 principles if you want to. But we've realized that the ESG principles actually have unlocked opportunities, and we don't see it as a burden for us. And if you look at some of the initiatives that we've already published and some other initiatives that we're working on, we're trying to use this more as an opportunity to implement solar energy supply, cogeneration, ESG type technologies, and to reduce our overall carbon footprint, which essentially would benefit us at the end of the day in terms of our operating cost. So we are totally committed, as we see this as an opportunity and not as a threat.
I think it's also important to note that, I mean, you look at a lot of consumers these days, they become more conscious in the products they buy. And I think that then does filter into big business too, in terms of practices and finding things in that regard, whether it be the Paris Climate Accord, for example. It's, as you said, it's not something you have to abide by, but there are those obvious benefits. And certainly, I mean, it's great to see that you're finding a way to incorporate them in a positive manner, as opposed to, for example, a mine out in China, which decides to spray its coal supplies green to pretend it's got more trees, which we saw a couple of years ago. So fantastic to see that you're doing everything above board and it's having great effects.
I think it's very important that mining companies do it, not because the consumer is forcing us, but because we want to do it. The consumer benefits is a natural knock-on from there.
Absolutely.
And also, it's not good for business. Even if you were not subject to any ESG principles, it's common sense. If you live with people, rather work with people in the environment, your community is probably the best asset any mining company can have, because your people make up such a big part of your business. And your labor would come from mostly, or should come at least from mostly of that around the people that live around the project. And so, of course, from an environmental point of view, if you issues with respect to the environment, then it will cost you. especially in this world now, but even before that, that's what a responsible miner must and should do.
No, I think you're 100% right, both Jurie and Eugene. I mean, you're talking a little earlier about the sustainability of the mine with having a 25-year resource lifetime, but part of that sustainability is, can you continue operating the way you're going? And if you're looking at these ESG kind of principles, that allows you to do exactly that. Jurie, let's touch a little bit here on another topic as well. I mean, it is interesting to see how this is unfolding for you. Where do you think you'd like the company to be in about 12 months' time from now?
We'd like to complete to have the DFS signed off. That's going to be a big milestone for us. And then also have an investment decision made. During the upcoming months, we would also like to add partners to the business that would be committing towards the capital expenditure, so that there's a clear path for us to raise the money once for the construction, once we do get to that investment decision, which will follow only after the DFS has been happening. And then also hopefully have some off-takes in place that make sense to us and to the market. That is where we think we will be, and that is basically what we would need to make it happen. There's a lot that can happen within the 12-month period that will point towards that, and that we can announce. But that's the ultimate goal, is to have the DFS completed, to get an investment decision made on the back of the partners that we will have hopefully at that stage already.
Are there any particular partners you're eyeing off? Are you allowed to discuss them?
No, unfortunately not, but it will be the usual suspects in many respects. Vanadium is a very niche market, and it's a valuable commodity. It does require a measure of marketing expertise that you would not find with other metals, simply because it is so niche. So yeah, unfortunately, we won't be able to tell you what it means. Yeah.
We've just mentioned how niche that market is. For those who aren't 100% across the concept of vanadium, what is its utilization?
Mostly in the steel market presently. About 90% of vanadium is used to strengthen steel, to provide it with ductility. If it wasn't for vanadium, you wouldn't have been able to have the strength in your motor vehicles that you have today, or your buildings that you have today. It has got some competitive elements in it that competes with it in some respects, with respect to steel, like niobium, but because niobium doesn't have exactly the same qualities, vanadium is preferred above niobium. Then it also obviously has a green element to it, which is growing every day, virtually every day, and that relates to mass storage of power, 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt storage batteries. And because vanadium has got a certain chemical composition, it allows the storage of energy, huge amounts of storage of energy in a fluid form, which is called the vanadium redox flow. The fluid is the electrolyte part of it, is the flow word in that vanadium redox flow. And that also allows the storage or the charging of this battery and the discharging of this battery at the same time, unlike other batteries. So it would be used in network stability, also in storing the energy that comes from the sun that doesn't always shine, and the wind that doesn't always blow, and that it can be used later on in the networks, and it's becoming increasingly more attractive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we hear a lot about lithium, for example, being utilized in batteries, but we often don't discuss vanadium. And I think you're right, it does often come down to how it is marketed, but there's definitely a place for it, that's for sure. Now, how would you say that VR8 is placed among other mineral exploration and development companies to create value for your shareholders?
As Eugene explained, we are in the lowest quartile when it comes to our OPEX, the numbers that we have from the PFS. That means that we are very competitive in the lows of the market. The current price is about 9. 15-year historical lows are about $3.55 per pound. So $9.55 is current price per pound. Historical lows over 15 years is $3.55, which means at the OPEX cost of $3.08, we will survive, and we will go through that. That differentiates us to a large extent from many others. And then also our CapEx numbers, which is also a factor that can be attributed to the location of the project, South Africa, where 90% of what we produce for the manufacturing of the plants and everything else comes from South Africa. It's got a history of qualification, people that's qualified to do this work. So that translates to a low CapEx, also a lower quartile CapEx compared to anybody else. And that then puts us in a position where we are well poised to go ahead and do what we have to do to fill the growing gap in the market, and then also compete a bit better with our competitors.
Well, Jurie and Eugene, it's been great to chat with you today. Just before I let you go, is there any final words you'd like to give to your shareholders?
I think I'll leave that one up to Jurie.
I always say, when you sit with a market like this, it's not like gold. That's fairly well understood in the resource industry. But when you sit with something like this, have a clear look at do your research, have a look at the peers that's around. Make sure that you understand where the market is going, and then look at the operational costs of all the companies that's around. If you are interested in environmental metals, have a look at that as well, because all indications are that vanadium will become one of the major green metals for the future. And that's the short message I would like to give to the investors.
No, it's a very strong message as well. Jurie and Eugene, great to speak with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, James.
That's Jurie Wessels, the non-executive chairman, and Mr. Eugene Nell, the chief executive officer of Vanadium Resources. And if you missed any part of that conversation, you can check out the whole interview along with our extensive catalogue on our YouTube channel, Kalkine Media. That's it for now. Watch this space for more. I'm James Preston, reminding you to stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.